What if everything you've been told about male sexual desire is wrong? What if it's not just about lust, ego, or biology, but something deeper? Something men don't often say out loud, even to themselves. In the next few minutes, we're going to uncover a side of male desire that rarely gets talked about. Not the surface stuff, but the emotional truth hiding underneath it all. If you've ever wondered why men want what they want, or why sometimes they pull away when they seem most interested, this will change how you see everything. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you won't just understand men better, you'll understand human connection on a whole new level. When people talk about male sexual desire, they often simplify it to something purely physical, like a biological drive that needs release. But this view barely scratches the surface of what many men actually feel. The truth is, male sexual desire isn't just about sex. It's about connection, affirmation, and emotional intimacy. A lot of men are silently craving something deeper, something that goes beyond skin-to-skin contact. They want to feel seen, appreciated, and emotionally safe. The physical part of desire is real, of course, but underneath that is a powerful emotional need that often goes unspoken. In our society, men are rarely encouraged to explore their emotions, much less express them. From a young age, boys are taught to man up, to be tough, to hide vulnerability. Crying is seen as weakness. Talking about feelings is often mocked. Over time, this conditioning teaches men that emotions are not safe territory, but the need for intimacy doesn't disappear, it just gets redirected. Many men express their emotional needs through physical desire because that's where they feel it's acceptable to be close, to touch, to connect. Sexual intimacy becomes one of the only places where a man feels he can fully let go. In those moments, it's not just his body that's involved, it's his heart too, whether he admits it or not. A lot of men use sex as a way to seek validation. When a woman desires them, it tells them they're worthy, they're attractive, they're enough. It makes them feel important in a world where they're often pressured to constantly prove their value through career, status, or performance. Sex, for many men, becomes a moment where they don't have to perform in those traditional ways. They can just be wanted. They can just be. This is why rejection can feel so personal to some men, not because of ego, but because of the emotional risk tied to desire. When a man puts himself out there sexually, he's not just seeking pleasure, he's seeking acceptance. He's looking for a space where he doesn't have to be perfect, where he can feel loved just as he is. Men also associate sexual desire with emotional bonding, though they may not always recognize it consciously. They may not have the words for it. But what they're often chasing is closeness. Physical intimacy becomes a stand-in for the kind of emotional connection they've been taught to avoid or hide. In relationships, this can lead to misunderstandings. A woman might interpret a man's sexual advances as purely physical, while he's actually trying to reconnect emotionally. When a man feels distant or disconnected in a relationship, his desire for sex might increase, not because he wants to escape, but because he wants to feel close again. He may not say this out loud, but in his mind, that intimacy has the power to rebuild the emotional bridge between them. Of course, not all male desire is emotionally driven. There are times when it's just about attraction or fantasy, but to assume that this is always the case is to ignore a huge part of what makes men human. Just like women, men want to be held, appreciated, and understood. They want their feelings to matter, even if they've been taught to bury them. And often, sexual desire is where those hidden emotions come to the surface. It's a language many men use when they haven't been given permission to speak in any other way. The deeper truth about male sexual desire is this: it's often a reflection of emotional needs that haven't found another outlet. It's a complex mix of wanting to be desired, to feel close, to be seen, and to matter to someone. When men find a partner who understands this, who sees beyond the physical and recognizes the emotional depth underneath, it creates a connection that goes far beyond lust. It creates real intimacy, the kind that lasts. When a man feels sexual desire, it can be powerful and intense. It might look like he's deeply interested, fully focused, even emotionally engaged. But that desire doesn't always mean love. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings in relationships, confusing physical desire with emotional commitment. Just because a man wants someone sexually doesn't automatically mean he wants a deep, lasting connection. It's easy to assume that because the chemistry is strong, there must be something deeper going on. But desire operates differently than love, and understanding the difference is essential for emotional clarity and relationship health. Desire is often immediate, it's reactive. It can be triggered by physical attraction, a moment of vulnerability, a certain look, or even the energy between two people. It's not something that always requires time to build. In fact, it can happen with someone a man barely knows. Love, on the other hand, is slower. It requires emotional depth, shared experiences, vulnerability, and trust. Love grows through consistency, honesty, and connection. Desire might be what gets two people in the same room, but love is what keeps them there when things aren't easy or exciting anymore. There are times when a man feels intense sexual desire and genuinely believes it's the beginning of something meaningful. In that moment, it feels real, and it is, in its own way. But what he's often experiencing is emotional projection, not emotional intimacy. He's drawn to how someone makes him feel in the moment, not necessarily to who they are at their core. This can lead to confusion for both people. The woman may believe that his attention means he's emotionally invested, while he might not even realize that what he feels is more about temporary chemistry than lasting affection. Men can be emotionally sincere in their desire without being ready for emotional commitment. That's why it's possible for a man to be completely genuine when he says he wants someone, even if he's not thinking long term. He might feel incredibly drawn to her, express affection, and even show signs of care. But unless that desire is paired with emotional maturity and clarity about what he wants, it doesn't necessarily mean he's ready for love or partnership. Desire can be misleading, not because it's fake, but because it's incomplete. It only tells part of the story. In modern dating, this gap between desire and love creates emotional tension, especially when expectations aren't aligned. A woman might assume that his intensity points to something deeper. She may interpret his sexual energy as a sign of emotional depth. But if he's not in a place to give more than that desire, she could end up hurt, feeling misled, even if he never intended to deceive her. This is why self-awareness is crucial both for men and women. Men need to know what they're truly feeling beyond the initial spark, and women need to recognize when a man's actions are rooted in physical desire rather than emotional depth. The truth is, men can compartmentalize desire and emotion more than people realize. A man may desire one woman sexually while having deep emotional love for another. It's not necessarily about character or morality, it's about how his emotional and physical needs are being met, and whether those needs are understood and expressed in a healthy way. When men are more in tune with their emotional world, they become better at distinguishing between temporary attraction and lasting connection. But without that self-reflection, desire can become a confusing force for them and the people they're involved with. Understanding that sexual desire doesn't automatically equal love allows for healthier boundaries and clearer communication. It helps both partners navigate early attraction without attaching unrealistic expectations. and it opens the door to real connection, built not just on desire but on truth, emotional safety, and mutual understanding. There's a powerful and often overlooked truth about male sexual desire. Men don't just want to be wanted, they want to be chosen. The difference between being wanted and being chosen might seem subtle, but it speaks volumes about how male desire is shaped. When a man feels that a woman desires him simply because he's available or physically attractive, it can feed his ego, but it doesn't necessarily touch something deeper. However, when he feels that a woman could have had other options, but chose him because of who he is, how he makes her feel, and what they share together, that touches a very personal and emotional part of his identity. It elevates the connection from something transactional to something meaningful. Men often carry the pressure of performing, proving themselves and competing in their careers, their friendships, and even in relationships. This creates an internal drive to be more than just enough. They want to be the one. And when it comes to attraction, knowing that someone deliberately picked them over other options is incredibly validating. It tells them they're not just attractive or convenient, but that they stand out in a unique and valuable way. That sense of being singled out creates a deeper emotional attachment and makes the desire more intense, more meaningful, and more sustaining. This dynamic also plays out in how men view availability. When a woman is too available too soon, some men may misinterpret that as her being available to anyone. It doesn't mean she's not valuable, it just means the sense of exclusivity might not be there. But when she's selective, when she has boundaries, and when she seems like someone who doesn't just give herself to anyone, that creates a psychological shift. If she still chooses him, he feels like he's earned something rare. That earned feeling creates emotional investment. It makes a man want to hold on to what he's found because it feels special, and more importantly, it feels real. There's also a subtle emotional layer here that many people don't talk about. Men, just like women, have insecurities. They question whether they're good enough, successful enough, attractive enough. When a woman with high standards and a strong sense of self chooses him, it doesn't just excite him, it reassures him. It sends the message that he has value beyond what he can offer physically or materially. It tells him he's seen and appreciated for who he is. This can deepen both sexual and emotional desire because it speaks to the core of how he sees himself. It's worth noting that the idea of being chosen doesn't mean playing games or being manipulative. It's not about withholding affection to create artificial scarcity. It's about authenticity. When a woman knows her worth and lives in a way that reflects that, a man feels the weight of her choice. Her presence becomes something he values more because it wasn't handed over without thought. It was a decision. And that decision carries weight. That's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it lasting. Many men are used to having their value measured by external things. How much money they make, how successful they are, how confident they appear. But when they're with someone who chooses them not because of those things, but because of their character, their heart, their energy, that strikes a deeper chord. It creates a connection that feels safe and validating. Where desire is no longer just physical, it becomes emotional and even spiritual. In that space, a man's desire becomes more focused, more committed, and more vulnerable. And that vulnerability is where real intimacy begins. Male sexual desire is often sustained and deepened not by constant availability or physical attraction alone, but by respect and challenge. While physical beauty can initially spark interest, it's rarely what holds a man's long-term attention. What keeps desire alive is the feeling that the person he's drawn to has depth, standards, and a clear sense of self. Men are more attracted to someone who commands respect, someone who respects themselves enough to say no, to express their values clearly, and to expect mutual effort. This dynamic shifts the experience of desire from being about conquest to being about connection, growth, and emotional stimulation. When a woman respects herself, it creates a natural boundary that doesn't need to be enforced with games or manipulation. It's something she carries in the way she speaks, how she carries herself, and how she handles emotional and physical intimacy. This signals to a man that her attention and affection are not given out casually. It tells him that if he wants to be close to her, he needs to show up with intention. And this shift, where he feels like he has to step up, earn her attention, and stay consistent, activates a deeper form of desire. It's not about chasing what he can't have. It's about being invited into something meaningful, but only if he meets her where she stands. The idea of challenge plays a big role in how male desire is experienced over time. This doesn't mean being difficult or argumentative. It means having emotional substance, independence, and the strength to walk away if respect is missing. When a woman brings her own life, purpose, and confidence into a relationship, she becomes more than just someone to admire. She becomes someone to grow with. Men who are emotionally available and ready for more than surface-level connection are deeply drawn to this. They find themselves desiring not just the woman's body, but her mind, her energy, and her presence. The challenge of staying connected to someone who is strong in herself is exciting because it demands that he stay awake in the relationship. It pushes him to be better, to communicate more clearly, and to show up with more emotional maturity. There's also something deeply grounding about being with someone who has high standards. It creates a framework of respect, and within that, intimacy becomes safer and more profound. Men don't always know how to articulate it, but many of them long for emotional structure. A relationship where they're not just free to take, but encouraged to give. They may resist it at first, especially if they're used to easy validation, but over time, they come to value it more. They feel more respected, more trusted, and more invested. And as that respect deepens, so does their desire. The absence of challenge, on the other hand, can make desire fade. When everything is too easy, when boundaries are unclear, or self-worth is sacrificed to keep the peace, the relationship can become unbalanced. The man may feel powerful in the moment, but over time the emotional connection loses its grip. He might start looking elsewhere for stimulation, not necessarily for someone more attractive, but for someone who makes him feel alive, engaged, and respected. This is not about playing hard to get. It's about living in a way that honors your own needs and values, and refusing to settle for less than emotional reciprocity. Men want to feel that their partner is strong enough to walk away if necessary, but chooses to stay because the connection is real. That creates a lasting emotional tension, a sense of mutual appreciation and effort that keeps desire burning. When a woman brings respect for herself into the relationship, it challenges a man to rise to meet her, and when he does, the connection that forms is more passionate, more grounded, and more deeply satisfying. The society has created a very narrow image of what male sexuality is supposed to look like. From a young age, boys are taught that being a man means being strong, unemotional, and always in control. They're told that wanting sex is natural, but wanting to talk about their feelings is weak. This conditioning runs deep. It affects how men express desire, how they interpret intimacy, and how they relate to both themselves and others. Because of this, many men grow up learning to suppress their emotional needs. They may not even realize they have them. Instead of openly seeking affection, understanding, or emotional connection, they funnel everything into sex, because that's the one place they've been told it's okay to want something. Culturally, male sexual desire has been framed as something simple and physical. It's been reduced to a basic drive, like hunger or thirst. But that narrative is misleading. The truth is, male desire is often layered with emotional needs that have been silenced or misunderstood. Men want to be held, they want to be seen, they want to feel emotionally safe. But expressing those needs isn't something they've been taught to do. So sex becomes the substitute. It becomes the only socially accepted outlet where they can feel vulnerable and close to someone else without having to put that vulnerability into words. Many men don't even realize that their desire for sex is often tied to a deeper longing for emotional closeness. They think they're just looking for physical satisfaction, but what they're often seeking is reassurance. They want to know that they're enough, that they're loved, that they're accepted. But because there's so much pressure to appear confident and emotionally bulletproof, they don't feel like they have permission to say those things out loud. So they seek those feelings through physical intimacy. And when sex is withheld or unavailable, it's not just frustration they feel, it's rejection, sometimes even shame, because in their minds, they weren't just turned down physically, they were turned away emotionally too. This emotional suppression also impacts how men handle relationships. A man might deeply care about his partner but have no idea how to express it in a way that feels emotionally open. So he leans on what he knows, sexual connection. He might initiate sex, not because he's only interested in the physical act, but because that's the one place he feels confident showing love, affection, and presence. And when his partner doesn't understand this, it can lead to tension. She might think he only wants one thing, while he's actually trying, through the only way he knows, to reconnect on a deeper level. The problem is that society rarely gives men the tools to explore or talk about their emotional world. There's very little space for men to be both sexual and emotionally expressive. When they do try to open up, they often fear being seen as weak or needy. So instead they tough it out, stay quiet, and let desire carry all the emotional weight. But no one's desire is just about sex. Not really. It's about feeling alive, connected, valued. And until men are allowed to explore those emotional dimensions freely, they'll continue to experience desire in a way that feels incomplete, even confusing. What makes this even more difficult is that many men don't have role models for emotional vulnerability. They don't see other men around them expressing affection openly, crying without shame, or asking for support. So when they feel emotionally raw or disconnected, they often retreat. They try to solve everything on their own. But those feelings don't just disappear. They get buried under layers of frustration, silence, or hypersexual behavior. And the more this continues, the harder it becomes to form real emotional intimacy. Until men are given the permission and the tools to explore their emotional needs openly, they'll continue to express their desire through a lens that doesn't fully reflect the depth of what they're actually feeling. One of the most misunderstood truths about male sexual desire is how deeply it's connected to a man's emotional and relational health. When a man feels emotionally connected, respected, and understood by his partner, his sexual desire tends to increase. It becomes richer, more consistent, and more meaningful. But when there's conflict, disconnection, or a lack of emotional safety, that same desire can either shut down or become erratic. Sexual desire for men is not just about arousal. It's a reflection of how safe, seen, and appreciated they feel in a relationship. Yet many people overlook this, assuming that male desire is constant, independent of emotions, and purely physical. In reality, a man's emotional environment matters more than people think. When he feels criticized, ignored, or dismissed, it can severely affect how he shows up sexually. He may feel less motivated to initiate intimacy, or he might pursue it in ways that feel disconnected or mechanical. Sometimes the shift is subtle. He becomes quieter, more withdrawn, less affectionate. Other times it's more obvious, like avoiding physical closeness altogether. These reactions aren't always conscious. A man might not even realize why his desire has changed, but deep down it often traces back to emotional distance or unresolved relational tension. Respect also plays a massive role in sustaining male desire. Men want to feel like they matter, not just as providers or protectors, but as emotional partners. They want their ideas, feelings, and efforts to be acknowledged. When they feel respected, they tend to open up. They become more emotionally generous, more connected, and more confident in expressing desire. On the flip side, when they feel belittled, ignored, or unappreciated, that desire dims. They may still go through the motions of intimacy, but the emotional fire that fuels genuine passion isn't there. And over time, this can erode the relationship from the inside out. Many men don't feel safe expressing how much they need that emotional closeness. They've been conditioned to believe that talking about feelings makes them less masculine. So instead, they act. They become quiet, they pull away, or they seek comfort elsewhere, through work, distractions, even infidelity. Not because they're inherently disloyal, but because they're trying to fill an emotional void that they don't know how to talk about. When they feel emotionally distant, they may crave intimacy even more, but struggle with how to approach it in a vulnerable, honest way. In a healthy relationship, male sexual desire thrives on emotional attunement. When a man feels emotionally seen, when he knows his partner is truly present with him, interested in his world, and responsive to his needs, his desire naturally intensifies. He wants to give more, be closer, and invest in the emotional and physical connection. This isn't just about libido, it's about emotional alignment. It's about feeling like both partners are in the same place, not just physically, but emotionally. And when that alignment is off, desire can easily become confused with frustration, pressure, or even resentment. Understanding this side of male desire requires empathy. It means recognizing that even if a man doesn't always have the words to explain what he's feeling, his behavior often speaks volumes. When he's distant, it may be a sign he's feeling hurt. When he's overly focused on physical connection, it might be his way of reaching out emotionally. When he's quiet, it could be because he doesn't know how to bridge the emotional gap he's sensing. By acknowledging this connection between emotional safety and sexual desire, couples can create deeper intimacy, not just in the bedroom, but in the foundation of the relationship itself. It opens up a space for both partners to be more honest, more responsive, and ultimately more connected. The truth about male sexual desire is far more complex and emotionally layered than society often acknowledges. It's not just about physical attraction or raw instinct. It's deeply connected to emotional safety, respect, and feeling chosen and valued. Men may express desire physically, but behind that desire often lies a need to be seen, understood, and emotionally connected. When those deeper needs go unrecognized, both by themselves and by their partners, desire can become confusing, inconsistent, or even destructive. But when we understand that male desire is not separate from emotional and relational health, we open the door to more authentic connection. We move beyond shallow assumptions and into a space where intimacy is not just physical, but rooted in truth, vulnerability, and mutual respect. In that space, desire becomes not just something men feel, it becomes something they share.